Good morning. I have been not very much involved in social media in the last quarter of the year, last year, so I thought it would be nice to do like a close up wrap up for 2025. I used to do recommendations lists on Patreon, like a newsletter type, which when I closed my Patreon, I haven't done any of that. So I think it would be nice to do this video that I've done last year where I picked a book for each month to sort of recommend, and I will sort of expand this into the bigger wrap up today. So let's just wrap up 2025. Let's go. So for January, my choice was Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. Little Thieves is a retelling of a goose girl, which I'm not much aware of the fairy tale itself, but the writing style was very beautiful and I loved how the characters were presented. So we follow a girl who is a thief and she tends to slip into these sort of different personalities, almost like a con artist to get her way um, in society. And at the same time, she got cursed because of thieving so much. She got cursed and she's slowly turning into precious gems, into rubies, unless she gives back all that she has stolen. So it's very interesting that her like godmother almost, or like mother element, is deaf. And I believe Deaf and Luck sort of met her actual mother in the crossroads. And I feel like all her fate and relation to these elements is very interestingly played out. February pick, I read Nettle and Bone. So I read Nettle and Bone, which is another fairy tale retelling. I think you'll see that I was very much into this fairy tale stories. Nettle and Bone is written by T. Kingfisher, and I think one of the things that I got into this year is T. Kingfisher's style. I already started reading more T. Kingfisher last year, but this year is like grown more and more really. I really like the voice and again characters. And for March, I picked Heather Fawcett, Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, which is a book free. And the main reason was that I really enjoyed the series, that I found that lots of cozy elements. I really like Emily's voice generally. Emily's voice is really more like scholar's voice. So you have that sort of skeptical view despite it being all about fairies and the secret worlds beyond that. I can't really now remember exact plot of book three. If I remember correctly, it might have been one about like a lot of lost pathways and trying to navigate the fairy realms. One is probably my favorite. I had it all like annotated and like looked through, and I found a lot of images that are just so evocative. So for April, I placed Dirty Laundry. The title is actually longer. The title is Dirty Laundry by Adults with ADHD So Ashamed and What Can We Do to Help? It's by Richard, Pink and Roxanne Emery. I followed them, somehow found them after my ADHD diagnosis, as we're doing a lot of social media reels about it, but are a little bit funny in a way. So, and a friend recommended for me to read this book. So I think it was very interesting because Roxanne is exploring her own diagnosis and also explaining her difficulties, which probably are more severe at the same time, but have helped me to get some sort of new insights. So it was a non-fiction book, as you can tell, but it's quite fun and quick to read through. So in May, I picked up on Earthy Briefly Gorgeous, and then looking through my entire year's list, this is the book that I feel like I still remember the impact of, really. Like I still remember how much it affected me at a time when I was reading it. It's written by Ocean Wong, and actually I'm looking into reading other books of the author. Every line is like poetry. There are very interesting phrases and very clean metaphors. So in a writing style, it's like a masterpiece. However, it is a very triggering book. I remember that it was a difficult read in that way, that is exploring almost like generational trauma and generational bullying. So it is like a love letter to a mother who was a bully at a time, really. And also, I think, if I remember correctly, Mara was also starting to get like a memory issues and so on. And it was really exploring how this sort of bullying comes through generations from like grandparents to parents and so on. And it was very at the same painful in a way that a lot of topics explored, and there's also queerness explored and obviously not approved, and it can be quite triggering read. Also remains of post-war and influences of that. June, I read John Harris Vian. As if you followed me long enough, you will know there's always at least one John Harris book in my list. So John Harris for me probably is mostly known by her chocolate series. If you have seen the movie, this is basically a book of those series. A lot of them can be read. A lot of those her books can be read out of order as a standalones. It does help knowing the characters and what happened in their stories, but Bian is really about the main character, Bian Rocher, before she had children or when she was pregnant and then she was just starting and just learning a craft of sweet making. The voice of John Harris, as she often reads her own books and audiobooks, is just like irreplaceable, really. I can't really detach the character from her voice anymore. It's always very much lulling. Like you can listen to it and lulling and can really imagine the character very vividly. So I think that's really part of the joy I get from those books because of that writing style, the character voice, including John Harris' voice, merging just perfectly. July, I was very interested in reading new Victoria Schwab book, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. So Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil is presented by the author herself as a story about toxic lesbian vampires. And I think there is more of a character exploration. It's very slow paced. If you thought Adi LaRue was a character exploration book in a way that it had not a lot happening and being very slow paced, I felt like this was even more so the case. It took more than half of the book to actually start being sort of interested in it. Once everyone was turned into vampires, that's where I started enjoying it really. So all the backstory that takes in the beginning was really, really difficult to get through. And I feel like also understanding that my taste might have been changing and sort of outgrowing Victoria Schwab maybe in some ways. We follow three characters, Maria, Charlotte, and Alice, and we see how they intertwine. Maria is from 16th century. She becomes vampire first, and then she meets Charlotte, who is from 18th century, I believe, and then we meet Alice, who is from 2000s. So obviously, that Maria is the start of it all. That Maria is the one who turns the other girls and so on. It sort of carries on like a legacy, becoming a vampire, and that connection with the master and their relationship and sort of almost like possessiveness is really explored in the story. And I think it gets more interesting the more toxic it gets. So it does take time to really understand it, to really get into it. I think it still influenced me. Still, I notice it still influenced like my own writing at the time when I was reading it. So I think it still has some really good aspects. In August, I picked House with Good Bones, another T. Kingfisher book. Surprise, surprise. House of Good Bones is basically a horror thriller story about a haunted house, let's say, and sort of again generational curses, which seems to be very much a theme in almost entire list of this. There is definitely every story is probably have some sort of generational aspect going on through. And then House of Good Bones is about it's about a girl who is sort of like a not a botanist. The main character is entomologist, so she studies bugs. But first, she sort of moves out into her old home, and she starts noticing there's not a lot of bugs in her garden, and that the roses are very lush, and the roses are very important apparently for the story. And there is basically a something creepy happening at home that is going down back generations, and I think the last connection is like grandmother, who's now passed away. But we can feel her presence. We can feel new and new things revealing that are still like very creepy, and the mother is acting very weird too. It's not quite, you don't quite know the truth, what is going on. There's not, I like the name House of Good Bones, but it's not actual bones. There are bones, but they are not actually like dead bodies buried in the walls that I was imagining this is going to be about. It was more like more subtle than that. But basically, I was starting to get into haunted house stories because I'm also was moving my old project along, which is about haunted house. It's just still gonna be in the writing trenches for a little while. September pick is Catabasis by Arif Kwang. Again, a new book. I always try to pick up new books close to them getting out. So I think it was close to Catabasis coming out. And it is about I believe it's like magic students who basically told us nothing about them to be magic students because we're never going to be able to be employed or use it. So there is about the story about this magic student who, like, in her university, she opens gates of hell to go after her professor who's gone sort of missing in hell, and obviously like a love interest or a colleague follows her. So it's very typical story setup that I would generally enjoy. The strongest part of it was very grounded. I felt like I felt like I need to review my writing, make it more grounded. It was very grounded in like real hell representations like Dante, and sort of making it feel like it's almost a real life thing. And then, however, it became a bit too philosophical when we actually ended up in hell. And that's where I lost interest. I really loved the setup. I really loved the initial banter between characters. I really loved the grounding. But once we started going deeper into hell, I found it was not so great. But I loved that at the end of the book we had also schemes how that Hell's map is presented by different people, including both of these characters that we follow. But I thought it would have been interesting if we have reversed hell, like the personal hell would have different layers or epicenters based what is their own sort of problem, core failure of a character, which actually I found very little difference between those maps, even though we were differently laid out, which wasn't, was felt like missed opportunities. Anyhow, I really enjoyed Arif Kwang and her writing style. Like I say, it's very unique in its own ways. But again, I don't know if my taste is changing, but I felt that it could have been even stronger. But it is her general goal that she has, that she writes these stories like Babel, where it's kind of almost grounded in real universities and real life, but at the same time are very magical, which is like absolutely her talent to do this. In October, I picked up a book called Carl Dungeon Crawler by Matt Dinneman. So Carl Dungeon Crawler was again very recommended, very much reviewed on a lot of like social media, a lot of people talking about it. And I was really curious because I started making a game around July, I believe, and I was sort of just growing interest in games, given as well in written worlds. So Carl Dungeon Crawler is really a RPG story. There is very much of swears and goriness and like unfiltered personalities. Um, but it does follow the isekai genre. So the character does get thrown into this new world, basically, that is an RPG based, almost like Hunger Games, really, where or Squid Game, where they are observed while playing this very destructive RPG game where millions of people just die. But basically, the real story is that aliens took over Earth, and if you were a survivor, you were put down into this cruel game. And then they follow Carl, who got thrown in with his cat. And his cat is called Princess Donut and is absolutely a brilliant character. She actually evolves into a thinking creature, which is even more superior than Carl. So I found that banter is very funny, as well as very jaded. Carl's view, he keeps being very grumpy, and also we have a host or the computer voice who keeps always mocking him. So it was very fun. I can see why it's very popular. It's fun to read. It's kind of funny, light, very readable. However, I found that because it's a series, there wasn't enough development. There wasn't enough character growth or development or like major arc. I just feel like really like just scrolling, just dungeon crawling, literally. And I don't know if I want to continue with the series, even though I found it quite enjoyable to go through. November pick is Lizelle Sunbury, Master of Monsters. I love Lizelle in a way that I follow her on social media. I probably read all of her books. I picked Master of Monsters for November because I was in a big, deep slump of reading. So this actually these last few months, I have not read a lot of books or haven't had a lot of options to pick from. We just moved to Canada and I learned that Lizelle is actually Canadian, which I thought is also even more amazing to put it in the showcase of books. I followed her vlogs and I followed her while she was writing Master of Monsters or editing, let's say. And she was also constantly comparing it to Arcane or Arcane Vibes, as well as it's going back to fantasy roots. She was writing some thrillers and horror-ish thrillers before this book, and this is going back to fantasy. What originally introduced her to me was Blood Like Magic, which I absolutely loved. However, Mastery of Monsters were not really sticking to me. I haven't actually finished it. I can't really even tell what it was fully about, but I feel this sense of solidarity because I was also writing it when I was watching her vlogs when she was talking about writing it and all these arcane vibes and whatnot. I was also editing my big fantasy too, and just felt like that, and also compared it to arcane, so I felt like that sense of solidarity with it. I don't think I'm gonna like finish reading it because I just I don't know if it's because most of her books I usually do as audiobooks. I didn't quite hooked in the beginning, so it became very hard to follow for me. Also, I think the pacing is very different from Blood Like Magic. I felt like it was much slower, so all these hooks didn't feel so close in the beginning. And I know there's another book already coming out. I still wanted to keep it on the list, even though I can't tell much about it, but that's really the reasons why. This consists of I was writing something similar, I had similar comparisons. Uh, it was a big cast as well as she's doing big cast in this book. It was a fantasy. So I wanted to leave it in and see if other ones of you want to try and read it and get back to me and tell me all about it because I already own it. I might just try to reread it when I'm in a better moment. In December, I picked a Brigands and Bread Knives, which is a continuation or like another book from Travis Baldree, who wrote Legends and Lattes. And obviously, I loved Legends and Lattes. I read the second book, and now I'm going into a third book. I do think that Legends and Lattes was the best one. But basically, it is in the same world, following the same character who was a shop owner. So we go into brigands and bread knives. But anyway, what I really want to say, I feel like I just started it. Again, I can't say a lot. I'm still in a reading slump, guys. So finishing books is kind of hard. However, I'm doing this as an audiobook, but I really just started it, so I can't really tell you too many things about it right now. But I'm sure that there will be cozy aspects and aspects that keep it brilliant. Right, I left the last section for honorable mentions because I think missing those like monthly reviews and monthly wrap ups really don't let me give what else I have been reading. I don't think honorable mentions are honorable mentions because we didn't quite go through the threshold to become, the main books of that month. But I thought I'll just quickly run through it to let you know. First of all, I want to mention Sylvia Plath's Belcher. I think because I didn't put any real classics in that list, I wanted to make sure bring it forward. It is sort of like a literature or journalism student coming to like New York and like seeing all these different like expectations clashing and societal norms clashing. The main reason I picked it up because I thought it was about like a literary journalist sort of student. A bell jar, even the name tells you why. What is the core of this book really? Because bell jar is basically a pedestal to put something in and like a door. So it really tells you that it's all about these societal norms and seeing people as if they are on pedestal, especially I think seeing women as we actually explore different women fates in this book. There are sort of like also mental health aspects going down in there. So, about not being able to keep that appearance, let's say. So I thought it was very like relevant. I read Kitchen Confidential of Anthony Bourdain. One of the things is why, because whenever we travel, we really quickly watch Anthony Bourdain shows, like Layover, to see what he recommends in those sort of places where we go. So I think I read it during our heavy traveling moment, and I was like, you know what, I really want to listen to one of his books and just really understand what sort of got him big. The most important book, which I'm gonna be probably rereading 1,000 times, and like you're probably gonna see some tabs at some point, is John Truby, The Anatomy of Story. I don't necessarily do a lot of writing books because I found it's either repetitive or they always say the same thing that are not directly applicable to me. Well, this is very, I thought, different dissection of a story than usual and really open up like new views and new ideas because this is very visual. Even the story itself, it explores that it can take different shapes. So, it really lets you to be sort of wild with your story and just giving some bones that you can attach to. And I think it was just brilliant. So these so far are the books, and we're heading on for a longer video because I do want to add my other mentions of the year really. So the biggest section here will be games. Right at the end, when I started making my game, or even a little bit before it, and we had a lot of stressors. So right at the end, we played like so many new games. I can't really quite place new board games because I think we stopped buying board games before our big move to Canada. But I can definitely place a lot of video games over here. We always play Baldur's Gate, so I'm not even gonna mention it significantly. Here we go. I'm gonna mention other games that I thought were just brilliant in their own ways. So I have to mention Chrono Trigger. One of the reasons is because it inspired another game on this list, and I never played it. And I had really sad childhood. I haven't played a lot of classic games. That's why I'm just like soaking these classics in right now. So Chrono Trigger was such a unique game, and it really makes me think that the games have such a big market for stories that are not explored yet. Because it is a story about time traveling. It is a game about time traveling. And at that time, especially, it feels like, so unique. Even now, I don't think there are so many games that can do time traveling, especially well. We know that books also say that time traveling done well is really difficult, but we definitely have time traveling quite oversaturated in like movies and books, while I don't think we have it oversaturated in games. Anyway, another reason was why I'm enjoying Chrono Trigger is that it's a pixel game. Since I'm making my own pixel game, I decided to really explore it. I haven't quite finished the entire game, but I'm really close. Like, if I wanted to do the final battle now, I could just close off and do it. But I am a person who needs to explore every nook and corner before going into that. But I think we are very close. We definitely finished like at least 2/3 of the game. For the first time, there's multiple endings as well, as I've heard. The next one was Final Fantasy VII second game. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I talked about this game so much. I think this is quite quite an impressive game, and I never played the original. Again, I had never played the original Final Fantasy VII, so it's hitting me with all the story and all the characters all at once. One of my favorite characters is Barrett. If you saw my studio, I even have like a little sketch I made of him on my grid wall. So, it talks for itself really, and I'm really looking forward for the release of a new one, the third game, the story, and the outcomes of the story, which is brilliant. It also very much reminds me of Zelda in a way where you have a lot of areas to collect. I think it's influencing my game making because I want to have a lot of collectibles and exploration. So, all these little aspects and the mini games as well, like it's a very massive and well-made game, and the battle system is not actually that heavy. I can actually do it all myself, unless a very difficult boss battle. And the final boss battle, I had to give it to my partner. But generally, like, it was the game I was like confidently playing through by myself, and it's really a masterpiece. I was really obsessed with it. I was talking about it for months. Everyone, even not gamer people, I was constantly chattering about it. So the third one on my list is Sea of Stars. It is a game that you can be played up to 3 players. It is very cooperative in the way that I found the games currently. I'm making more and more games that making more and more battle systems that needs you to be very focused and reactive. And this is one of those because the better you react, the better you perform, even though it is turn-based. But you also have these counterattacks and blocking and whatnot. In this specific game, Sea of Stars, you're actually reacting as a team. So all the reactions are tallied up together. And the more players you have, the probably more solid gameplay you have, I would say. So Sea of Stars is actually following these almost like monks, like specially trained children that are representing a sun powers and the moon powers, and they sort of are part of restoring the balance in the world, let's say. This is the game that was heavily inspired by Chrono Trigger by the creators. and we talk about it, and you can see a lot of little like Easter eggs that sort of reflect Chrono Trigger, but it also is a pixel game. So again, was a very big inspiration for me. I'm just soaking it in, and I'm like, I also want to be very inspired onto making my game, and like sort of almost comparing to these things in the game and thinking like, how can I make my game better, and so on. Why I want to say this is such a great game because I even got an art book. This is an art book of Sea of Stars, and the most wonderful thing of this is that you can see how heavily it was worked on by the artists. There were so many art assets and explorations that were not even touched or used in the game. And it's really like putting me to shame thinking like, oh, I haven't explored everything I make, I try to make it useful. Always go in saying to myself like, that this is what I'm making today, this is where it's gonna go. But this is a full-on exploration of things that not even made to the game. And also just to say that the artist released, so the book itself, by the way, consists of the emails and communications of how we were discussing what we needed for the game. So we literally just cropped the emails and commentary, and you can see entire that development process in that way. Maybe there's a little bit of shortage of environment explorations, but there is a very heavy character and especially enemy explorations that you understand how much detail gone into it. Now we are releasing, or just released, I believe, Sea of Stars' second book, and that one I believe is heavily on DLC content. So I'm not quite sure if I'm getting this one, but this art book becoming one of my favorites to look at, really. So that alone tells me like a lot. The game is wonderful. The story in it is also very nice. And again, you have characters you can get attached to. However, Sea of Stars is not very much talked about game. I haven't really seen a lot of people talking about it, and that's why I want to give it enough credit. Now, another game we haven't finished Sea of Stars as well. Let me tell you, but we probably just be finishing most of these games, to be honest. Another one that I want to tell you about is Expedition 33. It was announced in the Game Awards, but I think it was withdrawn. It is such a good game. We haven't finished it yet, and I don't even know the full story. I'm still in that wondering moment to understand what it is about. But it is very heavily relying on artistic imageries. There is main villain is called Pinterest, and there's like walking brushes, and you collect these elements called chroma. So it's all about colors and painters and painting elements, but it does feel a bit like we call mental crisis of an artist. It is a very, very dark game, and it does open with very sad themes right at the start, as well as there are like suicide warnings here. But we're really enjoying it. Again, battle system is very heavily reactive, so it's very heavy focus game. It's also very heavy a battle game. So I think it is much heavier in comparison of some other games I already mentioned. I'm gonna go on to the next one, and it is called Frosthaven. So Frosthaven is a sister or a brother of Gloomhaven, which is based on a board game. Now we poured a lot of hours into Gloomhaven, playing it with our friend, and it is sort of like turn-based tactical RPG cooperative game crawling through the dungeon, and I really really like it. And Frosthaven, we haven't even touched the surface yet, so I'm probably gonna be talking about it next year. So I only want to mention it more or less. Now, I started playing this other game during all the stressful moments. I started watching a lot of cozy streams and cozy games and upcoming cozy games, and I think I'll be talking about this going into the next year, maybe even film some games I'm playing. And I think this is the candidate for me to film because it's just so absolutely adorable. It's called Little Witch in the Woods, and it is a game about starting your, workshop of the witch in somewhere in the woods and sort of navigating there. I want to say it is very crafting heavy game. There's no battle as far as I have seen so far, but it's a lot of element gathering and crafting, and it does feel a bit of like Stardew Valley in a way. It is also a pixel game, but every single creature and everything in it is super cute, and it just makes me like so happy and almost giggle inside. The next one on my list is called Downfall. I honestly just played a few hours of it, but it is quite addictive. It is recommended by a friend because some time ago, quite a little while ago, I made a board game where you open tiles and you get sort of surprised by traps and ghosts and so on, which I kind of thinking like I would like to make something digital of it. Here we go. The Downfall is a tile game, tile city builder. Uh, where you're just managing resources. I generally not big in city builders, but because of that closeness to my own game and also very cute elements and like with every tile, every process is a mini game, so you don't really get extremely bored and you keep revealing things and there's a lot of reward systems like immediate reward that kind of hooks you in to stay longer. The game is called Thunderfall. It's another cooperative game and dungeon crawler in a way. This is a game we really got to play with friends, and me and my partner sort of playing through. It's very similar to Gloomhaven, how the system works in it. It is all the characters are animals, which also kind of cute. You're also drafting your own cards for the battle, similarly like in Gloomhaven, and I really enjoy those kind of character building elements in the games. So we really gone through. We played through entire um, game already once, and we started another campaign with a friend. So it's not a very long game. It can take a few days to play through, but it's not a very heavy long game in comparison to Gloomhaven, which takes 100 hours. And so I wanted to recommend it again because I don't think people talk about it enough, and some people might be looking for like cooperative games they can play. Now, this wraps up games as much as I can remember. And I just wanted to say that I haven't really made a list for TV because I didn't keep the track of what we're watching. The only one really worth mention was that came in later. So really enjoyed Only Murders in the Building because it was the moment when we started watching it, the last season coming out. When we started watching it, it literally said us like, oh, it's been a while since I had a show that actually gives me joy and pleasure watching. And I really enjoyed these comedic, mysteries and comedic horrors and things like that. And it's the things that pulls on some tropes and like familiarity of it, but also in some humorous ways. So I just wanted to mention this one. There is another one I just remember talking about it, and we were talking about the show a lot. I don't know if it's worth as much recommending as much as we took. We spent a long time talking about it. Uh, when we were watching it, it's called Last Man on Earth, and we haven't seen it before, and we were very surprised that it was filmed pre-COVID, but it has such a big aspects of COVID in it. I only gonna mention it. It has some depressing and triggering elements. It's I wouldn't be able to watch it during COVID and so on, but I would like you to think if you want to watch it because it is something we binged. It is something we talked about a lot. It was definitely a find. So I want to wrap up here without going any further titles, without inserting any further titles. I'm thankful if you stayed along to see the entire thing through. There's definitely a really good things in this list, but it also lets me sort of close up the last year. So thank you for being here. I'll see you next time. Bye.